The name of this series is going to be Uncle Davey's Herts Content, because it's in Hertfordshire, which is called Herts in abbreviation. This is Hilly Hopkins. It's now in this building. It used to be in a different building. There's its sign again, Hilly Hopkins LLP. It wasn't an LLP when I worked there. I used to work for them as soon as I left university. When I came out of university, I spent 3.5 years with them becoming a chartered accountant. And I have to say, I never regretted picking that firm. That's a quality firm, but they always had very good standards, but they're not a big firm. They had 10 partners and 3 offices when I joined them. I don't know how big it is now. Kind of lost contact with them because of going abroad, but they gave me a very good grounding in all different aspects of accountancy, which you wouldn't probably get if you worked immediately for one of the big firms. So this is what Hemel Hempstead looks like. It used to have a lovely big pavilion here that there was wrestling matches and all sorts of things going on there, but unfortunately they tore it down. They didn't replace it with anything at all. So whoever did that, whoever made that decision, ought to be bloody ashamed of themselves. This is Marlowes, which is the name of the main street of Hemel Hempstead. There's a library over there. Decorum College, as it used to be. There's the town hall behind it, Decorum College. And the building that I actually worked in when I worked for Hilly Hopkins wasn't the building I just shown. They moved there later on. They had actually very old offices. That used to be the cinema on that corner, and it got changed into something else. I think now it's a kind of club or disco. Peter Spivey's a sports shop, a one-off sports shop, and it's been here for ages, as long as I can remember. It's a very old name. So what do we have? Sort of down the opening part of Marlowes, there's what used to be the building Hilly Hopkins. Is now a firm of solicitors, and in that particular building in between the two, that's an old coach house. It's a listed building, coach house where they used to put the coaches and the horses. And here we've got one side is Alan Snow, and underneath it is a nice cellar which is an archive. And there's the main building that used to be Hilly Hopkins. Now it's Underwood Solicitors. The chimney on the top has got an interesting story to tell about that. Actually fell in when there was gales in I think it was 1987, or it could have been 1988 or 9. Can't exactly remember. But the chimney fell in while somebody was. There's a new chimney on top. The chimney fell in through the roof and just narrowly missed. It landed on the desk of somebody who had been working there a second before, or 10 seconds before, and simply went out to get some tax tables. And had he been there, it would have killed him. And of course he had a narrow escape. But these are the sorts of things that let you believe in Providence more easily. But they gave him at least, I think, the rest of the day off. But everybody was very happy that he was just alive. But it was very nice to be there those 3 years in that old building. Had a nice desk that I got very attached to. But one of the nicest things was I could go home for lunch, watch Neighbours, and I could spend very little time. It was just 5 minutes walk from my parents' home. So I spent very little time there in travel to and from the place, which was very good, obviously, as I could have more time for studying accountancy. And also they didn't expect you to do anything like overtime. They fitted it all in to a 40-hour week. They made you keep very closely kept timesheets. I know exactly what it was. There's an old, used to be free, probably isn't now, car park. And part of the old hospital's up there. They're going to change Hemel Hempstead from an 80,000 town to a 120,000 town. So in preparation for that, they've obviously closed the hospital. That's a logical thing to do, isn't it? If you're going to change from an 80,000 person town to 120,000 person town, you don't need a hospital in a place like that. This is the old covered market. It was uncovered, actually, traditionally. Became covered, I think, probably in the 1990s. In that corner, the minister used to preach the gospel on Saturdays. But for 26 years he did that, John Marshall. And obviously he's dead now, but I'm not sure they still do it. But next to the Salvation Army down there, he used to stand and preach on most Saturdays, and they used to pelt him with rotten fruit. And I'm not sure that many people were converted, but he showed extreme faithfulness in giving the gospel to the people of Hemel Hempstead. They didn't listen. They did not know how. I doubt they're listening now. And the whole place is becoming a little bit worse than it used to be. There's Hemel Hempstead's post office. Example of the pillar box for letters that is archetypal of English postal service or British postal service. Not many people know that they were actually invented originally by Anthony Trollope, the same person that's responsible for the Barchester Chronicles, a series of 6 books which probably are the pinnacle of character writing that any novelist has managed to achieve. Even Dickens probably only had about 6 or 7 characters that were rehashed through all of his books, whereas Trollope managed to develop about 30 or 40 really separate characters, individual characters throughout his novels, which tended to be in series. The most famous are the Barchester ones, but there's also the other novels, the Palliser series or something like that, which I must admit I haven't read, but I'm looking forward to reading in the future. Nobody ever reads Anthony Trollope. Everybody always claims to be rereading Trollope. Well, I'll confess without being beaten that I haven't read all of Trollope yet. What I've read I can certainly recommend, which is the Barchester stuff, and I certainly intend to read the rest of it. Just finding time for everything you want to do. So this has now become, which wasn't in my childhood, a pedestrian precinct, which I think is, you never know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but let's say it's a good thing to have pedestrian zones. The more I try walking around a place, the more I like it, but obviously when I just got a car, it was about the same time that they changed it to a pedestrian zone, so I was cussing them for it then. But now that I try and do more things on foot, I'm actually quite happy with that idea. It gives you an area space that people can use, but do they use it well? Well, it all depends on how well monitored it is, I suppose. These days you get more monitoring going on by camera than you do by actual foot police that are visible. The thing about cameras is you can forget they're there. Here I am talking, I almost forget that I've got a camera in my hand, for example. It won't be too surprising if in the future it becomes illegal for private people to take photographs like this, because people might say, oh, I don't want to be photographed by you for YouTube, but people actually walking around a bit and are getting photographed all the time. Just looking around where they are, there's one up there, for example, just on the corner of that building, just taking photographs of everybody, recording them. So there we are, Quis Photographiensis, who will photograph the photographers. So there we've got monitoring up there. And probably in a lot of other places that I can't see. Oh, there's another one up there over the Marlowes shopping centre. This is all new. This has been some quite interesting buildings, some of which you can still see. This where you've just got the remnant of yellow paint up there. It was gleamingly yellow during my childhood. I don't remember it being just remnants of yellow paint, but gleaming yellow paint. That's very sort of 70s though, or even earlier architecture. At least this one here was put up in the 50s. It's rather, creakingly old now. But this is the 90s stuff they put up. There's the Marlowes shopping centre with, a couple of levels and a typical mall arrangement. It's quite modern still, but it's not bad. Early Learning Centre's quite had a good name in children's toys. You've got an old-fashioned ice cream van here, even with a mock Italian name, which is good. And some things which I don't recognise. This Republic I don't recognise. HSBC used to be Midland Bank. Used to call it the Listening Bank. Now they can listen to their orders from China. And there we've got the very nice British institution as a charity shop, where you can go in and buy cheaper things, used things, for little money, and it all, goes to charity. You can even put your Valentine on the wall here. To Daddy, we love you. That's sweet. I don't know that people didn't used to, when I was a kid, people didn't used to write Valentines to their parents, but these days they do. But when I was a kid, you used to write Valentines to people you were trying to get off with, whereas now you tend to write them to your relatives, which I think is a change in our emphasis. I don't know where that came from, but it certainly exists. Other thing which has changed is, I didn't want to actually turn the camera on them, but the number of people that have come into Hemel Hempstead from other parts of the world, notably other continents. I think when I was a child, there was one Pakistani guy in the school, and I'm nothing against, I was actually mates with him. I was one of the few people that actually were mates with him, and the first word of Urdu that I ever learned was dost, which means friend. And other people weren't particularly queuing up to be mates with this guy, but I was very interested. I was in languages and cultures, but I have to say that when it got past the point where it's 10%, then it starts to create certain demographic pressures. And I think Hemel Hempstead doesn't have this. It's still predominantly white town, but there are places which are now over 50% Asian. Places like Leicester, a lot of London is, and we can't cope with that anymore. Demographically speaking, it becomes very, very difficult. That's why we get people like the Archbishop of Canterbury talking about introducing Sharia law and what have you, and getting the sack or wanting to get the sack. Well, he didn't want to get the sack, but he's saying he's not going to resign, but probably people want to sack him now for that, and I don't really have a lot to say on the matter because I'm not Anglican, I'm independent, but Protestant Christian, but quite frankly, if I was Anglican, I'd probably want to have him sacked for that. Now, this is Peter Percy. The hat that you see me do, the Geordie character Peter Poncheckian actually comes from Peter Percy, which is why I call it Peter Ponchek. It's got quality menswear, it's got old style English stuff, still of quality that you can get. I don't know whether it's actually open today. It may be because this grill here is open. Have a look in there for a minute. You see? Good palm fibre drop, but that's a Panama hat. All nice things like this. Probably they might not particularly like me. Air conditioned for your comfort. Probably I'll come in here one time this week and get myself some classical English garb. It's got some interesting things in there, and also it has things for quite big people, which is good for me. Most shops, most of your typical, multiple chain shops don't cater for the individual anymore. They just cater for the majority, and the majority is not quite as large around the waist as I am, rightly or wrongly. So, welcome to Hemel Hempstead, just to prove that we're here, my town. That's why I'm not doing it as Hooliganov. It'd be a bit silly, wouldn't it, to have Hooliganov's content and have him saying, this is where I walked when I was a little boy, tiny child on the streets of Moscow, and it's quite obviously, Hemel Hempstead, so I have to do this as myself. So it's less interesting than Hooliganov, but nevertheless, it's more real. So hope you still enjoy it and want to know a little bit about Hertfordshire, Hemel Hempstead and Hertfordshire. Got some nice white Rolls Royces here, and this new thing, Riverside, is absolutely new. I've never even seen it before. This whole area has just been added in, and it seamlessly integrates with what was here before. This was about the last thing before this blockbuster, and there was a road going up there. It's now been all paved over again, and the whole pedestrian area in the centre taken one stage. So I think it looks quite good. It doesn't look that new though, despite being brand spanking new, less than 2 years old, and that's the new Debenhams up there. which effectively means they've managed to bring this all the way across to the Gade. This is the River Gade, not very broad at this point. It actually was responsible in the end of the Ice Age for carving out a massive valley with a big gravel terrace. But it's not at that level now, obviously. I remember this is the area near that bridge over there. This is the area when I was a kid somebody pushed me in there once and nicked my shoes. A bigger kid did that. I wish people wouldn't do that, because after you remember it for a long time it's not a very pleasant memory, but obviously that's probably happens to most people at some time or another. An old lady watching said, "Oh, I saw that big bully do that to you." I said, "Well, thanks for stepping in." But she didn't. But I did find my shoes later. He'd left them in a bin, which was very thoughtful of him. So it wasn't as bad as it could have been.